All right.
All right.
So, we have a special guest today. Can you introduce yourself and
Sure.
tell the people what you do?
Okay. Kirby Bedsaul, President GM of Chris King. Um, yeah, run a badass bike company, Portland, Oregon.
Nice.
Yeah, make a lot of really cool stuff.
So, what kind of stuff do you make?
Anything with a bearing, pretty much. So hubs, headsets, bottom brackets, and then we do have some small, you know, other things like we do have a seat collar now that we just launched, and yeah, I mean,
And how? So, Chris King's been in business how long?
48 years.
48 years.
Yeah.
And kind of known, I feel like you guys are known as the high quality component,
Well, yeah,
bicycle component
yeah,
in
yeah.
the industry.
No, that's that.
Pretty
No, that's
much,
good. Yeah, it's
right?
it's bicycle components,
Yeah.
So yeah, it's we've been making it. 48 years old. Started in Santa Barbara, California, and then moved to Redding, California in 2000, and then in 2004 moved to Portland. So it's all been U.S. made. Source all of our materials as much as we can through the U.S., some through Italy, but yeah. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yep, we control every aspect of it. So that's what, that's the beauty of it, right? Is everything from design to engineer to manufacturing to assembly to shipping.
So you guys have like an actual, which I've like had the pleasure to visit a few times.
Yeah, you
like
have.
an actual freaking metal machining factory in Northwest Portland.
Yes,
Yeah.
that is it. We've got a 75,000 square foot building, and it's you basically see bar stock in the back, and then you go to finished goods and you see the finished product. And we pretty much, we make everything except for small little things like seals and snap rings. We don't do that stuff. We design it and then have somebody domestically make it for us. But that's the only parts then that we don't make.
Nice.
Yeah.
And so you guys have been kind of like on the forefront of sustainability, like actual sustainability in the industry, and that's kind of been your Chris King's like MO from the beginning, right? Like,
Yeah. Chris, being from Santa Barbara was just really in tuned with if you're gonna make something, you should be responsible for it, and that doesn't mean just the product; it means the waste as well. So the reason why a lot of people are like, well, why do you do all this stuff yourself? And it's not just the quality part, but it's the control piece of the like waste. Being able to use the right materials that allow the product to last as long as possible. And if you have to make a change somewhere through that process because you figure something else out, or just something comes up and you're like, whoa, if we did it this way, that'd be even better. So we can actually get to that, yeah. So we've been doing it, from the very beginning. It's definitely been Chris's ethos from the beginning of like, well, if you're going to do it right. I mean, you're already going to use materials and whatnot, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, well, make sure that you do it right then,
Well, and that's super interesting because I feel like, we talk about like innovation and that sort of stuff a lot in the outdoor industry. And I feel like, people talk about like a sea of sameness a lot for like, especially in like apparel and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And like what you're talking about is kind of like innovation and sustainability and whatever actually happening in the factory on the factory floor, right? Like that's the only place that it happens.
That's right.
Like,
Yeah. That's actually, yes, that's correct.
So if you're like offshoring all of your product, you don't have control over any of that, basically.
Well, yes, you're right. And it's also, you don't know what's going to happen once you do something. And then if you leave, how do you know it's still being done that way?
Yeah.
Right. So, our belief has just been, controlling as much of that as you possibly can gives you the greatest control of all the quality and the recyclability or whatever you're doing, right? Like
Yeah.
just it gives you the greatest control of all of it. So everything from what the product is and to the waste, how are you handling the waste? Because you're in control of it. So, yeah.
So some of the like things that I remember from my tour of the factory are the like recycling of the scrap components. Can you explain that?
Yeah,
'Cause that's really cool.
Yeah, so the thing that we make the most as a manufacturer is waste.
Yeah.
Let's just call it what it is, right? Let's not hide from that. I mean, that's what happens when you manufacture is you make waste. So how do you handle that? And one of the ways that we do with the material specifically is we keep our material sorted. So if it's certain aluminum, certain steel, certain titanium, whatever it is, we keep it sorted, and then we actually clean it. And by what I say is clean it, we use canola oil as our cutting fluid. So we're able to use a machine that's a palletizer, and we can actually squeeze the pucks, and we can actually squeeze out all the vegetable oil off the pucks out of the material, and then we can recycle the vegetable oil back in. But then it's the what we're left with then is a sorted, as clean as possible material pressed into a puck, which in the recycle side of it is a lot easier for the recycler to handle, right? Because you don't have to clean it quite as much. It doesn't take as much energy to clean it, right? Because you got to burn off all that stuff when you recycle it.
Yeah.
And with it being sorted, they don't have to resort it. And then with it being, in the pucks, we can actually put more material in a vat than if it was just a bunch of squigglies. So then their trip to the shop is less. So all around, we can really control that whole piece of just talking about the material side.
Yeah.
We can control that all the way and actually try to find spaces all the way along that line to do better.
So for people that haven't like looked at machining, and I'll use my like very novice understanding. So you have like a lathe or like a mill or something, and it spins, and then it's like using tools to carve little pieces off of it until you get the shape that you want, pretty much.
Yeah.
And so it's creating all these little like squiggly, you're saying, little squiggly metal pieces, and what you guys are doing are collecting all those and then compressing them and getting all the oil that you're using. So when you say like you're using canola oil, what do most other machine shops use?
Most of them are using some sort of either it's got some petroleum, water base, something, and it is not an infinite recyclability of those. Where canola oil is actually an infinite recyclability, and you don't have a hazardous byproduct, right? So it stays pretty much in its state. So we can just keep recycling it over and over and over. Now you'll eventually lose it, through just spilling it and stuff and whatnot. But there are pros and cons to all that. One of the other pros is that the tooling tends to last longer using canola oil. But we got to slow the machines down. So
that's what I was going to ask.
Yeah, we can't machine as fast.
Okay.
Right. So there are the pros and cons to it, but we feel that. So what if you got to slow the machine down a little bit? At least you're not dealing with a hazardous byproduct, right? So, so that's the kind of the canola oil piece of that.
Nice.
We even recycle it out of the air. We recycle it out of the So we have a big D4 air turret that all the machines are hooked up, right? And so we're pulling air off, and then there's we have cotton filters that we can wring out and put all that, and we have a centrifuge. So we put all this stuff in a centrifuge to clean it, and then we can take it right back out onto the floor and put it in the machines.
Damn.
So
That's
we
wild.
really do try to capture it from all, and that's again back to the ethos of the company. That's why we control all these operations, because these are the things that you can figure out and then you can apply them, right? You can apply more strategies and whatnot to do even better and better and better. I couldn't imagine trying to tell a factory somewhere to use, you'd be like, that would just be a laughing. Okay.
Then you got to put this like cotton filter in, and then
They'd be like, can you leave now?
Sure. Okay.
Yeah, everything's great. Bye.
That's really interesting because that's all. There's also like slowing machines down. There's cost there, but there's also cost and material savings in reclaiming the oil, and reusing it, and all that.
Yeah, there is. And for us, it's not so much the savings, but it's really more about doing it right.
Yeah.
And that's really what it comes down to. Because canola oil is more expensive than regular cutting fluid. But again, it's, you're like, it's just another step that you get to take to remove a hazardous material that you have to deal with, right? And you're like, well, and then on the shop floor, it smells fine.
Yeah.
Doesn't have a bad odor. By us using those big, the ventilation system that we do, we don't have a lot of, there's not a lot of debris. I mean, you guys have been there, right? The floor isn't slick. There's no like residue in the air.
Yeah.
So it gives the work environment as well. That's the other great byproduct from it. The work environment then for the people is clean. It doesn't have a lot of like odor or bad smell or chemical or anything like that. It's just canola oil, man. It's just like, maybe, I don't know, go cook up some chicken.
That's awesome. So the other thing I remember, so maybe talk about like the process, because so you go from like bar stock, it gets machined, and then what happens? Well, like I guess depending on the product, obviously.
Yeah, it does. It depends on the product. But so you've got raw material that comes in, gets prepped, goes out to the machine. Depends what you make. It's going to go through a series of different steps to get to the end result. But so it goes through the machining process. And then our fit and finish is very important to us. So we have quite a process when it goes to like actually the polishing piece before it goes to anodizing. And we do something really cool in that realm as well, which is, we don't use a lot of water in our facility, which most people, and I mean, I'm not claiming anything. I just, from my experience, most people will use some form of water and stuff in their polishing process. We don't use any water. So even our permits and stuff like that for the building, like we don't have to run under any kind of like production or a different type of permit because we don't.
You're not doing anything.
We're not
like
doing anything weird. So it's really interesting that we don't have this issue in our building because we can just put water right down the drain because we don't have any byproducts in it. So then in the polishing side, the finishing side, we use walnut shells.
Yeah.
So, and it's just like sandpaper. You've got different grades of walnut shells, so you can just put them in these tumblers, and they just turn it on, and they just walk away, and they just bounce around in the tumblers, and it's just like the little magic going on in there. So that's more for the smaller stuff, headsets and bottom brackets. Hubs, unfortunately, we can't run in those because they're a little too big, so they'll bang into each other, and they'll dent.
Yeah.
And, stuff like that. So we do have a robot that does some of that polishing for us, and then it is by hand. Some of it's by hand because it's just hard to polish that. And we have some ideas for the future I hope we can get to that will do it even better. So that's the finishing process, which gets it to that shiny, just like mirrored finish, which you have to have because if you send anything to anodize that has any imperfections in it, you'll see it.
Yeah.
So, we take that incredibly serious. So it's like when you grab our stuff and look at it in our piano room, it is a mirror.
Yeah.
And then it goes to anodizing, which is locally as well. We own the processes to the anodizing, so the colors are our colors. Like we developed those colors. We didn't just kind of go to a.
You guys have awesome colors also.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah. So those colors were designed. We figured out those colors, and then that's part of our IP as well. Is that whole process. So we just don't send it to an anodizer and then they just do whatever. We have a line over there. We worked with them to develop the line and all that stuff. And then then it comes back and it's nice and pretty. It gets laser marked and then it gets assembled.
So do you do the engraving, the laser engraving in-house?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. We do all that in-house.
Awesome.
And then and then when it goes to assembly, then I guess the other process that I didn't talk about is the bearings. So we make our own bearings, which is very unique.
Yeah.
That is really. It's like the unseen magic, right? You don't really know that until you actually ride it. It's not like something you just look at and be like, wow. It's like, that's on the inside, right?
Yeah.
So then there's a whole piece of our factory that's about 40%, about 35% of our factory is dedicated to bearing manufacturing.
Nice.
Yeah, which is an art in its own. We have our own heat treating inside. So we heat treat, that's how we get our bearings. Our one of our sayings is our bearings wear in, not wear out. So they get faster in time.
Nice.
So it's like anytime we get somebody, and you got to service them, right? I mean, you have to clean them every now and then, and people will call us and be like, "Oh, I think my bearings are bad. Can I get new ones?" You're like, "No, you don't want to get new ones. You just want to clean them up and re-lube them because they're faster than they were when you first bought them."
Nice.
And so that usually surprises a lot of people. Like, "Oh, wow, okay."
And so you guys will do, like, if there's an issue, you guys have like a section where you're doing repair and that sort of stuff.
Yeah. We have a lifetime warranty on our products. So so we always laugh. The guy Carlo, who's in our warranty tech, he heads that up. We have one person that heads up the whole warranty tech department.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So we've always prided. I feel that's a big spot of pride that you can have a 48-year-old company have a lifetime warranty, and we have one really awesome person who can run it.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So it's like it's kind of the Maytag. We used to laugh the Maytag washing machine repair guy. You see on TV that was always bored.
Yeah.
Because it never broke
It's
down.
got nothing to do. Yeah.
But yeah.
That's awesome. I guess what happens? I mean, does anyone ever actually wear out a component and kill it completely?
Yeah, I mean, it is metal, right? I mean, you can wear things out. It's not like it's indestructible. That would be a lie.
Yeah.
It's like lifetime warranty is always, I think, the word lifetime warranty is, it's like, well, what's a lifetime, right? And we use it, the more I've thought about it, the more I ponder it in my head of well, what does that really mean? Let's not get too deep in that, but it will wear out. Of course, things will wear out. And if someone rides a lot, they can wear some things out, but it's going to take a long time. It's not going to happen in a right away. But in that case, I mean, we'll get you taken care of, So yeah, it's, yeah.
So one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you, besides just enjoying talking to you.
Oh, dude, hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, got to give a plug out to you guys. You guys make awesome stuff yourself. So,
thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
I mean, it's the best. The best.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
What was I gonna say? You flustered me.
It's the best.
So one of the comments that we get a lot, I think, on on social media and stuff is, especially if we're critical of another company, is, well, they're a B Corp, and it's that's a end all statement. They're a B Corp, so that means that they're doing a really good job, or whatever that brand means to people. Mm-hmm. And so I know that Chris King has a lot of experience with in the B Corp organization and that sort of stuff, and that you guys have stepped away from that. So I'm always curious to learn more about what that actually means, because there's perception of what it is, and then there's what it actually is. Right. So I don't know if you can talk a little bit about your experience.
I can talk about it. So I think, again, you and I have talked about this, right? The movement is awesome, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we nobody should ever be like, oh, I don't agree with making things sustainably, paying people for, nobody's, I mean, if you're disagreeing with that, so the movements are good. I think sometimes for us, so I can speak for us, right? As I'm not going to speak for anybody else, but we found that, I mean, simply put, we were actually ahead of the B Corp.
Yeah.
So I think the B Corp's their positioning and what they're trying to do, again, makes sense. I just think that they actually have a little ways to go to bring on people who truly I think they need in their organization or in their their thing, which is manufacturing and stuff, because you look at where the waste really happens, right? Or like you're talking about, like in the textile stuff. But that doesn't mean, though, just because this is the other thing, I think people need to be very careful, and they need to do a little research. So, I know I'm going to show my age, okay? I know as social media has come around, people's like ability to really process and stuff seems like it's just it gets a little quicker, and they're just processing stuff, but they're not really stopping for a second and saying like, well, maybe I should do a little research.
Yeah.
Right? So, I mean, I would say just because somebody is that, still do your research, right?
Yeah.
Because, the B Corp has a lot of different classifications as well, depending on what kind of business you are. So they have a different, you go through these different approval processes. So, like, somebody manufacturing is going to have a different approval process than somebody that's at an attorney, a law firm.
Yeah.
Right? Or something like that. But it shouldn't be, oh, that's that, I believe that. It's like, well, still take time to do a little research on it, right?
Yeah.
And find out, you can go on the B Corp website and find out how they got their certificate, and you might find, you're like, oh, wow, they're really strong here, but boy, they don't do really well over here. And maybe that's an interest to you that you don't want to support that, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. Just, so, big companies can pay.
Uh-huh.
Go through these certifications. They can hire. I don't want to get myself in trouble, but I just feel, I'm just trying to speak honestly. And I don't know, I'm not putting anybody down. It's just, if you're a company that has resources at your disposal, right, which is cash.
Yeah.
You can hire, right? Okay, I'm going to go hire what are some of the new terms now you see people that have jobs with, like the environmental, like there's all these new
consultant.
Yeah, it's a consultant, but like people have internally, groups of people who are dedicated to that, right? And that's because they have the funding to do. So they're basically hiring in people to do that. Where somebody like you or I don't have resources. I mean, we have to do that, right?
Yeah.
So that's the other thing, is like, if you're a big company, you can, if you find the right resources and you're willing to pay for it, you can probably figure out some stuff, right? Yeah. I'm just saying that. I'm not saying that's just.
So we've got like now some big companies that are B Corp that became B Corps, and that was kind of after you stepped away, or Chris King stepped away from the organization, right? So like, now Nestle, they're a B Corp.
Yeah, I mean, last I knew they were. I mean, that's when we pulled out. I mean, I haven't gone back and looked, but right when we pulled out, that came out, and I was like, ooh,
yeah,
that's an interesting one.
Yeah.
But I just hope that somebody almost has to. I just hope that they can govern. There's some way to look at it the other direction, which is holding the B Corp accountable too, right? Like in both these ways, because that's a really powerful statement that you're giving people the ability to say.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying anybody's doing. I am not saying anybody's doing anything wrong.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, though, as this grows, and as bigger companies get involved, there tends to be more money involved, which we all know what comes with that, and then you want to make sure that it stays clean. It's clean. And otherwise, it will just become just like anything else, and then nobody will believe in it. And,
And it seems like, I mean, that's kind of the way a lot of the third-party certification stuff exists, right? Like, I feel like the big companies that participate use it as a marketing tool.
Yeah.
Obviously, because they are paying a lot of money to do it.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking specifically not just B Corp, but the other one we get all the time is like, well, they're fair trade certified.
Right.
And it's like, well, what does that mean? And, who, like, if you take the time to look at, like, actually look at those organizations, like, how are they operating?
Right.
And, is there transparency and, like, how their certification system is working, like what kind of salaries are their executives making, even though they're a nonprofit, like all of those sorts of things. And I feel like, that gets kind of ignored a lot because we are like this social media, whatever ADD generations of people
that's
now.
what I was looking for. Thank you. That's it.
Like,
Yeah.
like, swipe and there's like a thing about fair trade. Cool. Like whatever.
Yeah.
Next. Yeah. So I don't know.
Yeah. And as a, and we were talking about this earlier, right? Just as a smaller company, like I don't know anything about fair, for the record. I don't know really. You've been educating me on that, right? Because I'm not in the textile business. So I'm learning about all that, which thank you for educating me. But yeah, it's you as a big company of they're trying to tie into these things that matter. As a smaller company though, you're doing the whole thing. You're doing it as a whole holistic thing, right? Which I think is the part that's really hard then to go get certified. You're like, but you're not even looking at it as deep as we are. Like we're way deeper into this than you guys are.
Yeah.
Right. And like fair trade, as we were talking, like you're like, well, I know everybody who makes this stuff. I know where the material comes from. I know what people are. You're like, well, what does it really mean at that point if I have all this stuff locked up, right?
Yeah.
And it's done. Like just because I don't have a fair trade thing on it,
means
does that mean that I'm not as good as, I don't know, a big company over here making stuff wherever they're making it, right, with the fair trade logo?
Yeah.
Because I could come here and talk to you, and you can take me right to LA, where your stuff, right? Your stuff's being made, right?
Yeah.
And it's right next to the mills. It's there. It's what's happening. You're like, that's probably as fair trade as you can get.
Yeah.
Right. You're like,
I agree. Like, I spent some time going through like fair trades. They have like 154-page document. That's all all the metrics that the factories have to meet. And having run a factory myself, also, like, I look at it, it's all good stuff. Like this is all every factory should be aspiring to like meet these goals and whatever. But a lot of it is like, I feel like 3/4 of it is you could walk into any factory, any garment factory in the world and know, like, in about 5 minutes if they're doing those things. So like I don't, I know there's like shitty sweatshops all over the world.
Sure,
like, no doubt about that.
Absolutely.
But I don't know. I don't know what my point is.
Well, I think what you're saying, Bill, is that as a small manufacturer who really does control the aspects of everything, like you're getting lumped in then with, like maybe you're getting messages like, oh, your stuff isn't fair trade. And you're like, wow, now as a small company, I really need to spend a bunch of time educating people who are coming to me to understand, I guess, what fair trade is and then how I would fit into that, even though I don't pay.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to pay for that.
Yeah.
Because I don't have to, because it will literally be just a tag for me.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing they're adding to me.
Yeah.
That's going to add to my business, but a fair trade tag, like that doesn't feel good, right? It's like, what?
Yeah.
Like I'm doing this work, right?
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah. So I think it is. It's when you got the marketing horsepower, the bigger business going out there and really beating the drum on some of this stuff, and then as we said, the ADD, just swiping and looking and reading really quick, but not doing the research on what does it really mean.
Yeah.
Then yeah, it makes it a little bit more difficult to compete, right? Because people are looking for these icons or something, and not that they're bad. It's just because someone does. I guess it's just because someone doesn't do it, you probably should find out what that company's doing because they might not be able to afford it, or they're more worried about doing the right thing than spending money on trying to tell you how they're trying to do the right thing.
Yeah.
But they're actually doing it, right? So you're like, and that's what we got to, like with the B Corp. I'm like, I'm not going to pay a bunch of money to get recertified because I'm going to go invest it in our business to do better.
Yeah.
That's that was for us, right?
And that's kind of like how I've been thinking about the fair trade thing is like, okay, a portion of the money is going to fair trade as a nonprofit organization, which is actually, I guess, a business, and then these companies that are making fair trade products are paying a premium for this fair trade certified product that's going into a fund that then is like decided, like a council of workers in the factory decide how those funds are spent, so they can be spent on like healthcare, but they're not going to the workers who are often not making a living wage. So why are we spending all this like time and money and whatever when we could just pay the workers a living wage instead of?
That's a fair point.
Yeah.
Well, and then back to why you aren't, because you don't have to worry about a factory doing it, because you're using factories already, or whoever you're using, right?
Yeah.
You know what's going on, so you're like,
yeah.
I mean, we're doing better.
Yeah.
I don't need a fund to help that, because
No.
and then that's built. Of course, here's the other byproduct of it, right? That's built into, consumers have to just understand. Well, that's built into the price then of the product, right? Because I am using fair manufacturing practice, like what we consider, livable wages, good wages, good conditions, getting PTO, sick time, all the stuff that goes along with it. So yeah, it's like, even then you're kind of like, well, you need to understand, when you pay for something that's done like the way that you're doing it, I look at your pricing, I'm like, dude, that's amazing that you can sell it for what you sell it for, right? Because you're competing then against these big people that are making stuff in all these other countries that are selling it for your price, if not more. You know, and it's just like, wow, man. So this is that education piece that I'm hopeful that people will just take a little bit of a step back and like, okay, if I want to buy from, Bill over here at Northwest Alpine, just do a little research on what's happening, right? And I think you'll learn real quick that you don't have to be fair traded for what you do, because you're already, like.
I mean, and to like your previous point, I think that like, if we can sell like our Black Spider hoodie, Polartec Power Grid product that's cut and sewn in the U.S. out of U.S. materials for $135, and the comparable from Patagonia is $170, and we can make the margin that we need to make to stay in business and whatever, like selling a made in USA product with made in USA labor prices for that much, then how much money is Patagonia making off of their $170 version of the hoodie? Like, what are their margins? And how to I don't know how to think about that, except like, I mean, you think about like pricing in terms of like how people perceive value and not pricing off of cost and all that, but like, is the consumer really getting? Is it fair to, I mean, I don't know.
This is a great point, right? This is definitely leading off in kind of like in a different world, right? But I think you make a great point. And it is, what is the value that somebody's getting, right? And how's it priced? And we run into this, right? Because our product is expensive. I mean, back to like you just said, it's all made in Portland, Oregon, right? I mean, we pay. I mean, it's not cheap, right?
Yeah.
It's expensive to operate in a metropolitan area.
Yeah.
On the West Coast, right? I mean,
it's one of the most expensive cost of living.
There's nothing cheap there, right? And then so. Yeah, you're like, we don't price our stuff like what you're saying. We don't price our stuff off the market. We price it off what it just costs to make, and then make sure that we can make enough to continue the business moving forward. There's no ivory towers in Chris King. I mean, Chris isn't sitting around.
He's not a billionaire.
Yeah, right. Like
hanging out with.
Go hang out with the guy.
Jeff
You would
Bezos.
learn really quick. Like, this is a lifestyle. It's not a like this is what I'm chasing, is this wealth, right? The wealth is actually the product that you make that you're proud of. That's the wealth, right? So it is an interesting one, right? Because I feel like everybody who works at Chris King is in it for the ride, not in it for like I'm going to turn and burn, right?
Yeah.
Because it won't work, So there's a lot of passion there, which is awesome. It's a very passion-driven place as well. Now, of course, we all. you got to make sure you make enough, right?
Yeah.
And that's really the goal, right? Is to make sure you make enough to keep everything moving, keep everybody moving forward. But you just brought up a really good point. You know, how does somebody really price their product? Are they pricing it based on what the COGS of the product is, right?
Yeah.
Just on a, you know, like run down a P&L, right? And just here's my COGS, here's my operating cost, here's, you know, whatever. And then I'm going to price it because I want to make X percentage because that is what I need to make to keep wages moving and benefits and all that kind of stuff. Or are you like, sweet, we were able to make that for $20 and we could get about $150 on the market based on the market right now, right? And it's like, I guess, okay, cool, you know, like, you know, finding out ways to cheaply make things and then really market them way up, which is, you know, Chris has said it over and over again, you know, you get into profiteering.
Yeah.
You know,
interesting.
Yeah, yeah, and you know, that's just not, you know, it's not who you are.
Yeah.
It's not who we, you know, and the reason for it is it's not that you don't want to make a little bit of money. That's not it. Like, again, everybody needs to make something.
Yeah.
But that's not the driving force. The driving force is you actually give a shit about what you're producing.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, I care. I really want people out there having a great experience with my product. And if I can't make quite as much because I need to, you know, if I price it off the COGS and it's just going to be really like, oh man, the odds are you're going to back it up, right? Yeah. And then you're going to be like, well, I would guess I just won't make as much because I really want people using the product.
Yeah.
Right. And, you know, I kind of feel the same way we've been, even though people will be like, your stuff is ridiculously expensive. It's like, yeah, it's ridiculously expensive to make. You know, it's like, yeah, it's expensive, you know.
And I kind of like how I've been thinking about it, is like, you know, we have like, you have cost of goods sold, right, which has a labor component, has a materials component, and, you know, that labor component is the part of the price of the product that's being shared with the workers that are making the product, right? And so when we offshored that, it went from, because they said, you know, fuck you, American workers, like, you want too much, like, you know, you want to be unionized, you want to make like whatever, you want all these healthcare benefits. No, like, we're just gonna, you know, we're gonna send this to China because they don't care. Like, they'll work for whatever. Yeah. And so your labor cost of goods went here.
Yep.
And so all of a sudden your, you know, gross profit is now massive in comparison. Yep. And did you lower the price for the consumer because now your cost of goods is less? No.
Yeah.
Like, you know, so that, and that's how you get, I think that's how you get wealth inequality, right? Well, because all of a sudden, like, you're no longer sharing the part of the profits with your workers.
Right.
It's going, a smaller percentage is going overseas.
Right. Yeah. Oh, wow. You just stepped into a whole nother realm over there, didn't you, Bill?
I know. Maybe we're getting too deep.
Like, people are just going to be like, I'm not watching this anymore.
Yeah, we'll see. Like, you can see the time. They're like,
yeah. Womp, womp, womp. Oh, my gosh. Well, you know, and I know you and I have talked a little bit. That's another kind of, like, interesting piece of that is the thing that I've noticed more of, you know, and this has been going on for a long time, right? I mean, we're talking like the 70s, you know, when, you know, all this stuff really started to shift. The thing that worries me is that there is an unrealistic expectation of what the cost of goods should be.
Yeah.
Right? So when you hear people say, like, priced fair, it's like, well, define fair for me, right? Like, what is fair, right? So you even get into these places where, you know, well, yeah, why is your jacket, why is your spider $139? You're like, you wouldn't pay, then you obviously don't even understand, like, what the true cost to make something is in a country, not just here, but anyway, Italy, you know, France, Spain. I mean, you know, so you don't even have to keep it here in the United States. Just look at other countries that have those same laws, same regulations to protect people, and to make sure that, you know, they try to keep the, you know, the different, you know, they try to keep it a little bit more in a fair zone. Yeah, it's like the real cost of goods. That's the real cost of goods, man. I mean, to do these things, you can't sell a T-shirt for $5.
Yeah,
that's not going to happen. Like
someone in that transaction is getting fucked, and it's almost always the worker that's making the product.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think like one thing that we struggle with in apparel is that like the cost of almost everything goes up over time.
Oh yeah.
And because apparel and the nature of like the wages that are paid and chasing low cost labor all around the world, is that there's actually been like deflation in apparel. Like if you're looking at like Walmart, which is one of the largest apparel sellers of apparel in the country. So you can buy a pair of like $13 Wrangler jeans at Walmart, which is insane to me.
Yeah.
So just the like how low the wages are, and then you have people that say like, well, it isn't comparable to their cost of living or whatever. And no, sorry. These are like the poorest, most exploited workers on the planet.
Right.
It's a mess.
Yep. Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, as I get older, I'm like turning into more curmudgeonish. It's kind of like as I get older, I'm just like you notice things. You're like, wow, okay. Yeah, I think we're just in an interesting time right now.
Yeah.
We're in a really interesting time that you have all this stuff going on. And I started kind of saying stuff about climate change, more about like, no, you're trying to save the human race. Yeah. It's not really about the earth. When Mother Nature's ready, she'll just go. We're out.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, no, you're trying to save the human race at this point, right? Because this earth will repair itself just once we're gone, once the cockroaches leave.
Yeah.
It's like it'll be fine. But yeah, as I get older and I just see, just the different generations, I do have some faith that the younger generation is starting to, and everything, I think everything does run in a cycle, right? It's like you had bell-bottom pants, and all of a sudden you're like, wow, bell-bottom pants are back in. How'd that happen? My mom's like, you guys are wearing bell-bottom pants. Like, what the heck? You're like, so everything's cyclical, right? And I'm hoping that maybe some of this awareness that's starting to show up and whatnot is starting to hit our youth, starting to hit the kids either, that are later in high school, going to college, and have some, maybe have some faith in a lot of these kids that are coming out that are going to help us just not be so wasteful, just like put more value on quality.
Yeah.
Like I got this thing and it's going to last me for like 10 years. That's awesome. I don't need a blue one. I don't need a red one. I don't need a green one. And I don't need, I don't need 8 of them. I need a couple of them, right? Because they work well for what I do, and then that's it, right? And so I've got some faith that the younger generations may be gonna help us with some of this and recognize something like Northwest Alpine, like that's really cool, right?
Yeah.
And I know like my daughter is a sophomore at OSU Cascades in the outdoor product program.
Nice.
So it's pretty cool, right? I mean, it's kind of this cool like connection piece. And watching them, like, they're sewing their own clothes. They're sewing their own clothes. They go to, like, the thrifting, right? And then they'll sew things on the things that they thrift to make it like theirs. And they see that as the new form of fashion.
Yeah.
So it's not even buying stuff, like, from
that's awesome.
Timu or whatever it is. Just crap out there. So, yeah. And it makes me get real excited because I'm like, oh, wow, you guys see being authentic doesn't have to be new.
Yeah.
It can be something that was old and then you did something to it to make it yours that nobody will ever have. You couldn't get that anywhere. So it gives me hope. I was like, oh, wow, okay, that's super cool that you guys are seeing the value in that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think like it feels like to me there's like more people that are interested in like how things are made. Mm-hmm. And, it feel like, I don't know. I like feeling a connection to the things that like I buy. I don't buy a lot. Like we were talking about this before. Yeah. I buy like 1 or 2 pairs of pants and then wear them until there's holes in the crotch and like my wife throws them away. But yeah, I don't know. But yeah, feeling the connection, like buying stuff, knowing like who you're buying stuff from is like amazing. Like being able to see the factories that they're made in, like all that stuff. Yeah. Like That's what we need to do. Like, we need to understand that, like, just buying shit is like, to buy stuff is like become the American way, and that's so like bankrupt spiritually and
Well,
like
yeah,
morally.
I definitely struggle with even thinking about how many people spend money on things that just get thrown away. I'm like, man,
Yeah.
you work your tail off for your paycheck,
Yeah.
right? What is the satisfaction of getting something and opening the box and be like, yay, and then like in a, like I'm speaking more in the fast fashion,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I don't, and just it's gonna be gone in a whatever, right? And then I'm just gonna do it again. You're like, wow, it seems like you work pretty hard just to like throw stuff in the trash can.
Yeah.
Like, okay, whatever, Yeah, gosh, there was something I was gonna tell you, and you hit something. I was gonna say something, but now I can't remember.
We're getting the finger to wrap it up.
Oh yeah.
We probably.
Sorry, it's just like yeah. Oh,
Well,
I know. I did want to say one other thing. I do want to say one other thing. I think another important piece of like when you're talking about B Corp and all this other stuff, right, is if there's a way to find out, and you and I were talking about this, and I think this is great because here you got the two people who are actually in charge of the businesses, right? And look at how we live our life, right?
Yeah.
So it's not just a business decision; it's truly you're living what you're walking, right? And I think that, if anything, that is the holy grail for like who you're doing business with. Is if the people that are running the business actually live their daily life in the same thought process of what you and I are the same way, right? Buy a couple pair of pants. They're made in the USA. We're laughing. I got my Danner USA boots on. It's like, yeah, we almost look like a walking billboard for the United States, right? But you're like, yeah, I buy a couple of that. I wear it out. But I at least know, like, I met LC King that makes these pants. I met Jack King, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, I know the guy. Like, it's like, I know this. Oh, I don't, I met him, spent a day with him. He's awesome, by the way. Super nice guy. But you're right. You're like, you can feel even better, not just that it's made in the USA, but you're like, wow, I can see the person who actually runs that business, and they live their life a certain way, right? And it makes you like, oh, yeah, that just connects all the dots. So you can feel really confident when you buy something from you. You're like, well, I know Bill lives his life like that, so I know the product's going to be that way. Like, there's no question. So, yeah. That's
awesome.
That's what you get in the smaller companies, right? You get to see right inside of it.
Yep. Absolutely.
No hiding.
There's no hiding.
No.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for chatting and for coming down. It's great to see you as always.
Yeah, man. I'm glad your new facility here is fantastic. So thanks for letting me come down and check it out. And I'm just going to keep putting plugs in for you guys. You make great stuff, Bill.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
It's like the spider hoodie thing. The one I have that I've had, I don't know. I've had it for like 7 years. I think in the winter, I wear it every time I ski. It looks brand new.
Excellent.
Yeah. So it's like,
awesome.
Are you kidding me? Like,
Love
stuff
it.
is amazing. Yeah.
Awesome,
Buy
man. Thank you.
Yeah, you got it.